mountains once spoke with the voices of gods, and rivers mapped the journey of the soul. This was the reality our ancestors lived within, a world layered with hidden meaning. Today we are uncovering the secret maps ancient cultures projected onto the earth itself, from celestial realms to subterranean kingdoms. By the end, you will gain a powerful new lens to see the deeper stories buried in every forest and peak. How did a single tree connect heaven, earth, and the underworld across continents? Why did civilizations from Greece to Japan believe their gods lived on the same kinds of mountains? What if the world you walk through is still whispering those old, epic tales? What forgotten story does your own local landscape hold? This central pillar of belief is found in nearly every corner of the ancient world, a concept known as the axis mundi. Picture a single, immense tree whose roots sink deep into the underworld, whose trunk stands firm in our world, and whose highest branches hold up the sky. This was not merely a poetic idea but a foundational map of reality. From the vast ash tree Yggdrasil in Norse tales, which connected 9 different worlds, to the towering Mount Meru in Hindu and Buddhist cosmology, seen as the very axis around which the planets and stars revolved, this image provided a stunningly simple answer to a profound human question. Where is the center of everything? For our ancestors, the answer was not a distant point in space, but a tangible place here on Earth, a sacred axis that linked all layers of existence. This axis served as the ultimate meeting point, a conduit where prayers could rise toward a sacred mountain. This profound need to find the center most often crystallized not in a forest, but upon a summit. The axis mundi found its most enduring and widespread form in the sacred mountain. From the cosmic tree's branches, the human gaze was inevitably drawn upward to the most imposing features of the earthly realm. If the axis mundi was the map, then the sacred mountain was its most spectacular landmark, a divine address written in stone and cloud. These colossal peaks served as the ultimate dwellings for gods and spirits, places where the veil between worlds grew thin. The ancient Greeks watched the first sunbeams ignite the permanent snows of Mount Olympus and saw not just a geological formation, but the literal, physical home of Zeus and his pantheon, a fortress in the sky removed from the toils of the world below. This pattern repeats across the globe. In Japan, the perfectly symmetrical cone of Mount Fuji is not merely a volcano but a living kami, a sacred spirit whose serene beauty embodies purity and artistic inspiration in Shinto belief. Its iconic cloud-wreathed summit is a symbol of the nation's soul. In the biblical tradition, the stark, barren isolation of Mount Sinai provided the perfect, empty theater for a profound encounter. Its very remoteness and harshness made it a suitable place to receive divine law, a blank slate upon which a new covenant could be written. These mountains were more than just impressive scenery. They were active participants in the mythic landscape. Their inaccessibility, whether through sheer height, treacherous terrain, or perpetual cloud cover, was not a barrier but a feature. It protected the mystery of the divine, hiding the activities of gods from mortal eyes and making any journey to the summit a transformative pilgrimage. The natural phenomena surrounding these peaks directly fed their sacred narratives. Geomythic research shows how volcanic eruptions, like those from Fuji or the rumblings beneath Olympus, were interpreted not as tectonic shifts but as the palpable anger or activity of the residing deity. Unusual storms swirling around a summit were seen as divine conversations, and springs flowing from a mountain's base were gifts from the beings above. This created a powerful paradox in the ancient imagination. The sacred mountain taught that the divine was both immanently present in the world you could point to it, you could journey toward it, and yet it remained transcendently separate, forever just out of reach. This tension is what fueled centuries of art, poetry, and footsore journeys. It shaped an understanding of authority and order that descended from the heights, literally and spiritually. It prompts a personal reflection. What mountains or vast natural formations in your own world still whisper of something beyond the ordinary, that evoke a feeling of deep time or silent presence? While these luminous peaks housed the celestial, every culture knew that the mythic landscape had a shadowy, equally essential counterpart. For every mountain reaching to the heavens, there was a cavern, a chasm, or a deep lake leading down. Yet if the sacred mountain was the home of the gods, its shadow lay in the deep earth. Across the ancient world, the landscape of the living was mirrored by a vast and hidden geography below, a subterranean realm that governed the ultimate journey. For the ancient Greeks, this was the kingdom of Hades, reached only after a silent voyage across the river Styx, a passage paid for with a coin placed upon the tongue. This was no simple hell of fire and torment, but a complex, echoing reflection of the world above, complete with its own rulers, judges, and distinct territories for the virtuous and the condemned. This belief in a chthonic or earth-dwelling realm of the dead was a near-universal blueprint. In Mesopotamia, it was the grim land of no return, a dusty, darkened place where even great heroes like Gilgamesh saw their hopes fade. The Egyptians charted the Duat, a perilous, cavernous underworld the sun god Ra navigated each night in his solar bark, facing serpentine demons to be reborn at dawn. For the Maya, the road to Xibalba was a treacherous descent into a place of illusion and trial, ruled by malevolent lords. These landscapes were meticulously detailed, serving as profound moral and social compasses. They almost always featured key symbolic gateways and guides. A fearsome guardian, like the three-headed hound Cerberus, marked the point of no return. A stoic ferryman, like Charon, demanded payment for passage. An impartial judge, such as the Egyptian god Osiris with his feather of truth, weighed the heart of the deceased against the weight of a feather. And flowing through it all were the symbolic rivers, not of water but of concepts, the river Lethe offering forgetfulness of one's former life, or other streams representing oath-breaking or lamentation. This intricate geography served a crucial purpose. It transformed the mystery of what comes next into a knowable, if daunting, journey. Your actions in life directly dictated your posthumous destination, placing you in the asphodel meadows, the blissful Elysian fields, or the torturous pits of Tartarus. Archaeologists see this belief etched into burial practices worldwide. Grave goods, from coins for Charon to Shabti figurines meant to serve the deceased in the afterlife, were practical supplies for this believed voyage. The orientation of a tomb, facing west toward the setting sun or toward a specific sacred mountain, was a literal map direction for the departing soul. This imagined landscape was a powerful engine for social order, making the unseen world a guardian of the seen one. It answered the human hunger for justice, promising a final reckoning that earthly life often lacked. And it gives a deeper, older resonance to a phrase we still use today. When we speak of facing our demons or navigating a dark night of the soul, are we not echoing that ancient, deeply ingrained metaphor of a personal journey through a hidden, interior underworld, seeking to emerge on the other side transformed? But the human imagination did not only chart the depths, it also mapped the dazzling heights above. While the underworld held the mysteries of the past, the heavens above charted the future. For ancient cultures, the night sky was not a scattering of random lights, but a grand, illuminated blueprint. In Babylon, priest astronomers meticulously recorded the paths of wandering stars, planets they saw as divine beings navigating celestial rivers. This was not idle stargazing, it was a sacred science, a way of reading the intentions of the gods in the only part of the world that moved with perfect, predictable order. Their observations, driven by mythic belief, laid the very foundations of astronomy and mathematics. This pattern of mapping meaning onto the constellations is a human universal. The same cluster of stars we call Orion was, to the ancient Greeks, a mighty hunter eternally pursuing the Pleiades across the dome of night. To the Egyptians, it was the god Osiris, a symbol of resurrection whose appearance heralded the Nile's life-giving flood. The sky was a storybook, a vast narrative scroll unrolled each evening, filled with epic tales of love, conflict, and transformation that were directly linked to the rhythms of life on Earth. These stories served profound practical purposes. They were a living calendar. The helical rising of Sirius in Egypt signaled the coming flood. The position of the Pleiades told Polynesian navigators when to set sail and Greek farmers when to harvest. By embedding their myths in the stars, cultures created a reliable, immortal almanac, turning the chaotic passage of seasons into a predictable, storied cycle. This celestial landscaping provided the ultimate sense of connection and destiny. The Milky Way, that hazy band arching overhead, was rarely seen as just a galaxy. Across cultures, it was a river of heaven, a path for departed souls, or the spilled milk of a divine mother. It connected the earthly realm directly to the cosmic origin point, a shining highway linking human existence to the infinite. This belief gave people a place in a grand, beautiful, and orderly narrative. Their lives, their journeys, their very souls were reflected in and guided by that eternal, sparkling map. The detailed knowledge of star lore possessed by some cultures remains breathtaking. The Polynesians, navigating the trackless Pacific, used star roads, memorizing the precise rising and setting points of hundreds of stars to steer their voyaging canoes between tiny islands thousands of miles apart. Their sky was a chart, and each constellation was a landmark on an oceanic highway. Similarly, the Dogon people of Mali possess a complex cosmology centered on the star Sirius, including knowledge of its dense, invisible companion star, Sirius B, facts that puzzled modern astronomers when they were first shared. Whether this represents preserved ancient wisdom or remarkable cultural insight, it underscores how deeply human beings have looked to the heavens not just for direction, but for meaning. When you look up at the Big Dipper tonight, you are seeing more than a pattern. You are witnessing the remnant of an ancient mythic map, a set of stories that once taught lessons, marked time, and guided voyages across both sea and spirit. The stars offered a clear, predictable order, but back on the ground, the path was rarely so straight. The journey between the sacred mountain and the spirit world often wound through a much more tangled and unpredictable part of the mythic landscape. But the celestial map offered no guide for the path through the whispering trees. Between the ordered city and the sacred mountain lay a different kind of territory altogether, a place where the map itself seemed to dissolve. Step into the deep, primeval woods of ancient Europe, where sunlight fell in dappled, uncertain patches and the very air felt thick with possibility. This was the Enchanted Forest, the ultimate liminal space in the mythic imagination. It was not a destination, but a transformative passage, a living threshold where the familiar rules of society and nature were gently, or sometimes violently, suspended. In the tangled heart of the Black Forest in Germanic tales, or within the legendary greenwood of Sherwood in England, the forest was never merely a collection of trees. It was a character, an animate and sentient being. Every rustling leaf could be a spirit, every moss-covered stone might mark a fairy's doorstep, and a ring of strangely vibrant mushrooms was a clear sign you had stepped into a circle where time flowed differently. This landscape was neither purely safe nor wholly evil. It was a place of profound ambiguity, a testing ground for the soul. Here, heroes like Sir Gawain in the Tale of the Green Knight faced challenges that were as much about internal integrity as external survival. The forest stripped away social rank and comfort, forcing a confrontation with the raw, untamed parts of the self, what we might call the unconscious mind. It was the dwelling place of archetypal figures, from mischievous tricksters and wise, reclusive hermits to dangerous, symbolic beasts, each representing a facet of the unknown world and the untamed psyche. To enter this space required a specific code of conduct, a deep respect born of understanding that you were a guest in a realm you did not control. This concept appears globally. In Japanese folklore, the Kodama are spirits that inhabit ancient trees, and to hear their echo in the mountains is to know you are in a sacred, sentient place. Harming such a tree could bring misfortune, a lesson in humility and ecological reverence. The forest, in these stories, was a teacher. Its lessons were about listening, about navigating without a clear path, and about recognizing that the veil between the human world and something older, something wilder, was astonishingly thin. It served as the classic setting for initiatory rites of passage, where a youth would enter the woods one person and, after trials and revelations, emerge fundamentally changed. This ancient narrative template is so deeply embedded in our storytelling DNA that we still use it instinctively. Can you recognize it in modern tales, from the sinister, shape-shifting woods of a fantasy film to the procedurally generated, mysterious forests of a video game, where players know to expect the unexpected? These digital and cinematic woods continue to function as spaces of trial, transformation, and encounter with the unknown, proving the enduring power of this mythic landscape. Yet if the forest represented the mysterious, tangled frontier on land, the ancient gaze also looked outward to a realm even more alien and boundless. Beyond the shelter of the trees lay the vast, horizonless expanse of the sea. The forest's edge often gave way to the shifting sands of a beach, and beyond that stretched the ultimate unknown. Beneath the restless waves lay a kingdom of a different order, a realm of crushing pressure and silent currents where human rules held no sway. This was the abyssal and aquatic landscape of the ancient imagination, a domain of crystalline palaces and sunken cities that represented both the source of life and the heart of primordial chaos. For the Greeks, it was the empire of Poseidon, a god whose temperament was as changeable as the sea itself, capable of gifting calm passage or summoning world-shattering storms with a strike of his trident. This duality was mirrored across the globe. In Mesopotamia, all creation was said to begin with the Abzu, the sweet water abyss that mingled with the salt waters of chaos to birth the first gods. This made the deep not just a place, but a foundational ingredient of reality itself. For the Polynesian navigators who knew the ocean's surface so intimately, the realm below belonged to Kanaloa, a powerful god of the deep sea associated with squid and the mysteries of the unseen. Here, the sea was understood in its full, paradoxical nature. It was the ultimate nourisher, providing a bounty of fish and pathways for trade. Yet it was also the great destroyer, capable of swallowing entire fleets in moments of terrifying fury. This dual character is why so many sea deities were complex figures requiring careful appeasement through ritual and sacrifice. They were not simply evil or good, but powerful, mercurial forces that demanded respect. The myths themselves were often rooted in startling, real-world discoveries that ancient peoples struggled to explain. A shipwrecked vessel found years later, its wood bleached and broken, could easily transform in storytelling into a ghost ship crewed by spectral sailors. More powerfully, the occasional discovery of giant marine fossils, like the skull of a prehistoric mammoth or the vertebrae of a whale, washing ashore or eroding from a cliff face, provided tangible evidence for tales of monstrous leviathans and coiled krakens lurking in the blackness. The ocean was a literal reservoir of the unknown, and these stories served as a vital, practical mythology. They explained maritime dangers, justified necessary taboos to protect fishermen, and codified hard-won navigational wisdom into memorable legends about sirens who lured sailors onto rocks or storms unleashed by an offended deity. This mythic mapping of the deep created a framework for engaging with an environment that remained almost entirely inaccessible for millennia. It transformed a blank space on the map into a populated, storied realm, making the terrifying vastness somehow more comprehensible. Our contemporary fascination continues this ancient tradition. When we send submersibles to the crushing depths of the Mariana Trench or scan the seafloor for hints of lost settlements like Atlantis or Doggerland, we are driven by the same impulse that inspired tales of Poseidon's palace. We are still projecting our imagination onto the deep, still seeking to fill that eternal blue mystery with discovery and story. Yet if the chaotic sea represented the untamed and unknown, the human spirit also dreamed of a landscape of perfect harmony and order, a sanctuary carved from the wilderness. Yet the sea's chaos only sharpened the longing for a place of perfect order. In the shadow of the untamed wilderness and the unpredictable ocean, ancient cultures dreamed of a sanctuary, a walled garden where every leaf was in its place and every season was spring. This was the mythic paradise, a foundational concept that gave form to humanity's deepest yearning for peace and abundance. From the legendary Hanging Gardens of Babylon, said to be a verdant mountain built for a homesick queen, to the biblical Eden, a garden planted by the divine itself, these were landscapes of radical harmony. They represented a world as it was meant to be, a stark and hopeful contrast to the very real hardships of drought, famine, and conflict that defined daily life for so many. This vision took many names and forms across the globe. The Greeks spoke of the Elysian fields, a blessed afterlife realm of soft meadows and gentle breezes reserved for heroes and the virtuous. Chinese Taoist tales describe the mystical isles of Pinglai, floating mountains in the eastern sea where immortals dwelled among miraculous plants. In Celtic mythology, Tir na an Og was the land of youth, an island across the western sea where time stood still and joy was everlasting. These were not just pleasant destinations, they were powerful psychological and moral compasses. Their defining feature was their impossible location, always placed just beyond reach, at the very edge of the known world, across an uncrossable ocean or atop an unscalable peak. This distance was essential. It made the paradise a goal, the ultimate reward for an epic quest or a life well lived. The journey to find it was as important as the place itself, testing the seeker's courage, purity, and resolve. Within these imagined gardens, specific symbols always grew. The tree of life or the tree of knowledge stood as a central pillar, offering immortality or divine wisdom. Healing herbs that could cure any illness and flowers that never wilted were expressions of a timeless, flawless nature untouched by decay. These elements were a direct response to the human experience of loss, illness, and the relentless passage of time. The paradise myth provided a potent answer, suggesting that a state of wholeness and perpetual peace was not a childish fantasy, but a potential reality, a spiritual destination woven into the fabric of the world. It served as a narrative anchor for hope, implying that the struggles of mortal life were not meaningless, but a journey toward a possible restoration. This ancient dream echoes powerfully in our modern pursuits. When we design a perfect virtual world in a game, argue for an idealized society, or even simply cultivate our own backyard garden into a personal retreat, we are engaging in the same fundamental act of imagination. We are trying to carve out a space of order, beauty, and tranquility from the chaos, continuing that timeless search for our own personal Tir na an Og. But if the garden represented the dream of eternal peace, the mythic imagination also had a template for the opposite extreme, a landscape not of harmony, but of cataclysmic and defining strife. Yet paradise is not born from stillness, but from a cataclysm. Before the garden, there was the forge. Across the ancient world, the most dramatic and untamed landscapes were not seen as accidents of geology, but as the permanent scars of a foundational, world-shaping war. These were the primordial battlefields, mythic terrains where chaos itself was defeated to carve out the ordered cosmos we inhabit. The Norse described Ginnungagap, a yawning, silent void where the searing realm of fire and the frozen land of ice finally met and clashed, their explosive interaction slowly forming the very ground under our feet. In the Vedic traditions of ancient India, the epic duels between gods, the Devas, and their powerful rivals, the Asuras, were said to have literally sculpted the Himalayas, with every jagged peak and deep valley marking the fall of a titan or the strike of a divine weapon. This was a powerful way of seeing. It transformed what we might call natural disasters or random geological violence into a coherent, sacred narrative. A volcano was not just a dangerous mountain, it was the still smoking forge of a god or the imprisoned breath of a defeated monster. A solitary, impossibly balanced boulder in a field was not glacial debris, but a weapon thrown and forgotten in a celestial duel. An earthquake was not a senseless tremor, but the restless shifting of a giant buried beneath the crust. These stories served a profound psychological purpose. They took the terrifying, unpredictable power of nature and gave it a story, a reason, and a place within a moral framework. The world's rugged beauty was proof that a cosmic order had triumphed over primordial disorder. We can see this template etched into specific, awe-inspiring places. In Italy, the Phlegrean Fields, a vast, steaming volcanic region west of Naples, were known to the ancient Greeks as the very battlefield where the Olympian gods, led by Zeus, fought and overthrew the giants in a war for cosmic supremacy. The sulfurous fumes and hot springs were seen as the lingering breath and blood of those fallen foes. In Australia, the rich narratives of the Dreamtime describe how ancestral beings, in their epic journeys and struggles across the continent, shaped every feature of the land. A particular waterhole might be where the rainbow serpent plunged into the earth, and a distinctive rock formation could be the petrified body of a creator ancestor who rested there. This perspective created a living, dynamically created world. The land was not a passive stage, but an active participant and a testament to sacred history. Every cliff face told a chapter, every river sang a verse of an ongoing spiritual epic. It fostered a deep, reverential connection to place, where the landscape itself was a library of lore, identity, and memory. So the next time you stand before a dramatic landscape, a sheer canyon wall or a lone, towering mesa, ask yourself this: does it feel like a relic of an ancient, colossal story? That feeling is the echo of the primordial battlefield, a whisper that the ground beneath us was won in a struggle of cosmic proportions. And from that understanding of sacred conflict, the human imagination could finally envision its ultimate resolution, a landscape where all struggle had ceased. The primordial battlefield eventually cooled, and in its farthest, most silent corners, the ancient mind conceived of a landscape beyond all conflict. Beyond the known winds lay a realm of impossible contradiction, a frozen wasteland bathed in eternal sunlight. The Greeks called it Hyperborea, a land beyond the north wind where a golden age never ended. Its people, the Hyperboreans, were said to live for 1,000 years in perfect peace, feasting and celebrating in a place where Apollo himself spent the winter months. This was a profound paradox, a glittering, crystalline desert of ice associated not with deathly cold, but with warmth, vitality, and immortality. This archetype of the timeless wasteland appears across traditions, a place where the normal rules of nature and time are utterly suspended. It might be a valley asleep under a glacier, a desert of living glass, or a silent plain of glittering salt where a hero is trapped in an enchanted sleep. These were landscapes of absolute otherness, realms untouched by decay, change, or any mortal concern. They were often guarded by insurmountable barriers, like the impassable Rippean Mountains in the Hyperborean myth, or by mythical creatures symbolizing the extreme environment itself. What inspired such visions? We can look to the edges of the ancient world, where travelers' tales or the logic of geography suggested truly alien environments. Encounters with the edges of glacial landscapes or the vast, lifeless expanse of deserts like the Sahara or the Gobi would have presented ecosystems operating under seemingly different natural laws. A desert that glittered like a field of diamonds under the sun, or an ice field that reflected the sky in a maze of blue light, these were places that felt outside of time. They pushed human imagination to its limit in conceptualizing pure alterity. In the symbolic language of myth, such a frozen or crystallized realm did not represent mere cold, but a state of perfect static purity. It was a symbol of death as a kind of preserved stasis, or of a spiritual condition so absolute that it was inaccessible to living, changing humans. A god or an ancient being might slumber there, preserved until the world needed them again, their rest itself a form of cosmic balance. This ancient fascination with suspended animation and timeless voids never left us. Can you hear its echo in our modern stories? The science fiction concept of cryogenic sleep, where a traveler is frozen to cross the vast distances between stars, is a direct descendant of this mythic idea. The haunting, dead planets and derelict space habitats of modern cinema, worlds where time has literally stopped, continue to explore that same human awe and dread in the face of absolute stillness. They are our Hyperborea, our frozen wastelands, representing the terrifying and beautiful idea of existence without change. Yet for all its stark beauty, a frozen waste represents a network that has ceased to communicate, a system in perfect, silent isolation. But the mythic landscape knew another kind of hidden network, one that was vibrantly, secretly alive. Beneath the frozen stasis of a timeless waste lies a realm of vibrant, hidden connection. The ancient imagination did not stop at the roots of the world tree. It envisioned the entire earth beneath our feet as a vast, breathing labyrinth. This is the Mycelial Underworld, a foundational concept where cultures intuitively mapped the planet as a living being with its own dark, pulsing nervous system. While they lacked our scientific vocabulary, their myths describe underworlds that were not infernos of punishment, but damp, root-tangled caverns, places of fertile darkness essential for life above. In Celtic lore, Anon was a shadowy, otherworldly realm of deep forests and misty lakes, accessible through ancient burial mounds and hill forts, a place of both rest and mystical renewal. The Slavic Nav was similarly conceived as a vast, subterranean world of roots and rivers, where the spirits of ancestors resided alongside mythic creatures, influencing the fertility of the land. These were landscapes of communication and memory. Here, spirits were said to drift like unseen spores, and ancestral whispers traveled through root channels like nutrients through soil. This conceptualization presented a profound ecological intuition. The darkness below was not evil, it was generative, a necessary counterpart to the sunlit world, storing the wisdom of the past to nourish the present. Shamanic traditions from Siberia to the Americas describe visionary journeys down through root-like tunnels or into caves, seeking healing knowledge or counsel from those who came before. These journeys were not escapes from reality, but deliberate plunges into the foundational layer of existence, the subconscious mind of the world itself. This mythic framework challenged a simplistic vertical morality, where up meant divine and down meant damned. Instead, it proposed a cyclical, interdependent system. The great tree could only stand because of its unseen, intricate web below, drawing sustenance from the dark earth. This ancient metaphor finds a startling echo in modern science. The discovery of vast mycorrhizal networks, the so-called Wood Wide Web, reveals how trees in a forest are interconnected by fungal threads, sharing resources, sending chemical warnings, and even supporting their young through this subterranean internet. It feels like a breathtaking validation of that old, intuitive wisdom, a scientific lens focusing on what the mythic mind had already mapped in story. The earth truly does communicate in the dark. This understanding of hidden, liquid connection flowing through the roots naturally brings our gaze to the most visible expression of that flow above ground. These hidden, liquid networks inevitably broke the surface as life's most visible arteries. A river's course was never just geography. It was a sacred sentence written in water, a flowing timeline connecting the divine source to the mortal world and beyond. For countless cultures, the river was the ultimate mythic conveyor, a dynamic axis mundi that moved. Consider the Ganges, descending in Hindu belief from the celestial realm, purified by flowing through the matted locks of Lord Shiva before touching the earth, its waters possessing the power to cleanse the soul of lifetimes of karma. This was not a poetic exaggeration but a lived spiritual geography, where every dip was a rebirth and the river's flow carried prayers directly to the ancestors. This template is universal. The Nile was the pulsating lifeblood of Egypt, its predictable flood and retreat mirroring cycles of death and resurrection, its source a mystery guarded by gods. The Jordan River marked a transformative boundary, its crossing a definitive step into a promised land. Even the idealized landscape of Eden was defined by the 4 rivers flowing from its heart, dividing the perfect garden into the wider world. A river's inherent directionality made it a perfect metaphor for existence itself. It had a clear, sacred origin, often a mountain spring or a god's touch, and a mysterious, often ominous destination, merging with the chaotic sea or sinking into the underworld. This made the river a map of life's one-way journey, a physical manifestation of fate and the irreversible flow of time. The critical moments in myth and ritual therefore happened at the crossings. To cross a river was to transition between states of being. This is why the figure of the ferryman, like the Greek Charon who guided souls across the river Styx, is so archetypal. The crossing was a point of no return, requiring payment, permission, or purity. Similarly, the confluence of 2 rivers was seen as a place of immense spiritual potency, where the powers of 2 distinct waterways merged. Settlements built at these junctions, like Prayag in India where the Ganges and Yamuna meet, were considered especially sacred, magnets for pilgrimage and ceremony. This deeply embedded belief directly shaped daily practice. Rituals of immersion, from baptism to Hindu snan, used the river's flowing water as an agent of spiritual purification, washing away not dirt but moral or karmic stain. The casting of votive offerings, coins, or inscribed prayers into the current was an act of sending a tangible message downstream to the divine. The river integrated the sacred landscape into the rhythm of everyday life, its banks serving as temples, its waters a moving congregation. We still speak this ancient language today, often without realizing it. We talk of being upstream or downstream of a problem, of going with the flow, or of a stream of consciousness. We reference the relentless river of time. These are not dead metaphors, but the living echoes of a time when every river told a story of where we came from and where we are destined to go. And often, that story of origin began not in the open sky, but in a place of profound darkness where the water first whispered into the light. Rivers often emerged from the earth's most enigmatic portals, the silent mouths of caves. The river's journey often began in the profound silence of a cavern's mouth. To step into a cave was to cross a threshold into the earth's own body, a descent into a landscape that represented both the beginning and the end. The ancient Greeks called such a sacred space an antrum, a natural chamber used for initiation into the mysteries of gods like Pluto, ruler of the underworld. Here, the ritual act of walking down into the darkness was a powerful metaphor for a symbolic death, with the hopeful return to the surface representing a rebirth into new understanding. This was the womb tomb of the cave, a concept found across the globe. In Crete, the Psycho Cave was venerated as the birthplace of Zeus, where the infant god was hidden and nourished. In France, the stunning painted galleries of Lascaux were not merely shelters, but likely sanctuaries of profound spiritual significance, their walls serving as a membrane between this world and a realm of potent animal spirits. Caves were the ultimate paradox, places of utter stillness that pulsed with perceived power. Their constant temperature and profound darkness created a sensory vacuum, separating the initiate from the rhythms of the sunlit world. Their strange acoustics, where a whisper could travel and distort along a wet wall, made them natural temples for hearing the otherworldly voice of an oracle, like the famed Sibyl at Cumae in Italy. This environment was perfect for encountering the numinous, that overwhelming sense of a sacred, wholly different presence. Geomythically, we can see how observation fueled this mystique. The discovery of massive, unfamiliar bones eroding from cave sediments, like those of prehistoric bears or mammoths, provided tangible evidence for legends of dragons, giants, or monstrous creatures guarding hidden treasure deep within the mountain. The cave was a place where observation and imagination seamlessly blended. It represented the ultimate interiority, the hidden heart of the world where one could access primordial truths and memories that were obscured by the bright, chaotic business of surface life. This deep-seated mythic impulse never left us. Our continued fascination with exploring caverns, whether as physical spelunkers or through stories of hidden dungeons and secret lairs, speaks to a timeless draw. We are still compelled to enter the dark, seeking what foundational knowledge or transformation might be waiting in the quiet, dripping heart of the earth. But if the cave is a landscape of hidden interiority, what of the landscapes that have been reclaimed, swallowed not by rock but by water? Emerging from that symbolic womb, we encounter terrains not of nature's making, but of human memory and profound loss, the domain of the sunken city. The cave's silence gives way to a deeper, more permanent quiet, the stillness of a city sleeping beneath the waves. Plato's account of Atlantis is not an isolated fantasy, but the most famous chapter in a global library of loss. He described an advanced island kingdom, blessed with concentric rings of water and land, that sank beneath the sea in a single day and night of misfortune. For over 2,000 years, this story has served as the ultimate parable of hubris and divine punishment, a gleaming civilization erased for its arrogance. Yet this motif echoes far beyond the Greek world. Celtic legends speak of the magnificent city of Wise, built below sea level and protected by a great dike, only to be flooded when a princess, deceived by a demon, steals the key and opens the gates to the ocean. In the Amazon, stories persist of Paititi, a golden city hidden by the jungle, a place of immense wealth that vanished from history. These are not just tales of treasure, but narratives born from a profound, universal anxiety. They voice a deep-seated fear about the fragility of human achievement against the patient, overwhelming power of nature. Every wall we build, every field we cultivate, exists on borrowed time from the wilderness and the sea. The sunken city landscape is where that fear crystallizes into story, transforming historical trauma into a mythic warning. These legends almost certainly germinated from the hard soil of real geological catastrophe. A devastating tsunami striking a Bronze Age coastal settlement, an earthquake swallowing neighborhoods into a fissure, or the slow, inexorable creep of rising sea levels over centuries. Such events leave a scar on collective memory that lasts for generations. The survivors' descendants would speak of the great flood that took the old world, and with each retelling, the event grows in scale and meaning. The prosperous town becomes a glorious metropolis. The natural disaster becomes a moral reckoning. What begins as a traumatic memory evolves through the amplifier of myth into a grand narrative of a golden age lost through some fatal flaw. This process turns random tragedy into a lesson, offering a reason for the unbearable. It suggests that such a fate can be avoided if we live with humility and respect for forces greater than ourselves. The landscape itself becomes an archive, not of stone and ledger, but of ambition and consequence. The very idea that a sophisticated society could vanish compels us. It implies that advanced knowledge, perhaps even a purer way of living, lies just beyond our reach, buried in the silt or hidden by the vines, waiting to be rediscovered. This is why the search for Atlantis or similar lost worlds is so perennially fascinating. It is a quest for a second chance, a hope that we might recover something precious our own civilization has forgotten. Today, this ancient mythic template is reactivating with a new and urgent resonance. Our contemporary stories are filled with warnings of submerged coastlines and cities threatened by rising seas. When we see projections of future shorelines or discuss climate change, we are not engaging in pure speculation. We are participating in a very old human story, one where the ocean is the final judge of our actions. The sunken city is no longer just a legend from a distant past. It has become a potent metaphor for our possible future, a mythic landscape we are actively and anxiously writing into reality. It challenges us to ask if our story will be one of heedless pride followed by a great drowning, or of collective wisdom that changes the ending. This conversation with the deep shifts our gaze from the weight of water to the intangible medium that carries both warning and wonder. From cities lost to the sea, we ascend to landscapes defined not by stone or water, but by the very air we breathe and the sounds it carries. The silence of a sunken city is absolute, but the desert holds a different kind of quiet, one that hums. Traverse the vastness of the Taklamakan or the Sahara, and you might witness the sand itself begin to sing. Under the right conditions, as countless grains slide down a dune face, they produce a low, resonant boom or a haunting musical note that can carry for miles. To ancient travelers, this was not a geological quirk, it was a voice. They heard the distant bells of cities swallowed by the sands, or the mournful songs of jinn trapped within the dunes. This phenomenon of singing or booming sands transformed the desert from a passive emptiness into an actively communicative landscape, one that seemed alive with spirit and intention. In such a vast and silent expanse, the human mind becomes a powerful projector, filling the void with meaning. The shimmering heat haze on the horizon conjures phantom lakes and forests, classic mirages that taunt the thirsty traveler. A sudden, sculpting wind can whisper around a rock formation, creating auditory illusions that sound like faint voices or chanting. In this environment, every shadow and sound is ambiguous, ripe for interpretation. Cultures deeply woven into these landscapes, like the Bedouin of Arabia or the Tuareg of the Sahara, developed rich mythologies to explain and navigate these sensory mysteries. They spoke of ghostly caravans that appeared at dusk only to vanish by dawn, of speaking rocks that held the wisdom of the old ones, and of shimmering cities of brass seen from a distance that retreated as one approached. These stories were not mere fantasies, they were essential survival tools, personifying the desert as a capricious trickster, a being that could deceive with visions and melodies, taught a critical lesson in perceptual humility. It was a warning that in this extreme place, reality was not always as it seemed, and that trusting your senses without question could lead to your end. The environment itself was the ultimate teacher of skepticism and careful interpretation. This ancient relationship with ambiguous landscapes finds a direct echo in our modern understanding of the mind. What we call auditory pareidolia, hearing recognizable patterns like voices in random static or white noise, is the same cognitive process that led a lone traveler to hear whispers in the wind. Our brain is wired to find patterns, especially familiar ones like speech or song, as a way to make sense of uncertainty. Optical illusions where our eyes and brain disagree on what is real are our version of the desert mirage, revealing the gap between perception and objective reality. The desert's lesson remains profoundly relevant. It suggests that the most barren-seeming places can be the most communicative if we learn the right language to listen. They challenge our arrogance, reminding us that our perception is a construct, a story we tell ourselves about the raw data of the world. In an age of digital deepfakes and information overload, this ancient wisdom about discerning truth from illusion feels more vital than ever. The desert taught that some landscapes are not meant to be conquered but interpreted, demanding a dialogue between the external world and the internal mind. This conversation with illusion requires a foundation, a fixed point in the shifting sands, which humanity often sought to create with immense and enduring stones. The desert's shifting sands demanded a fixed point, an anchor in the endless dance of light and illusion. Our ancestors provided that anchor with stone on a scale that still defies easy explanation. To stand within the ring of Stonehenge at dawn on the summer solstice is to participate in a ceremony 4,500 years in the making. As the sun's first light pierces the monument's heart, striking the altar stone after perfectly framing the heel stone, you are not just watching a sunrise. You are witnessing the culmination of a Neolithic mind that saw the landscape itself as a colossal astronomical clock and a living temple. This was not architecture imposed upon the land, but a sacred anatomy drawn from it. Sites like Stonehenge in England, Newgrange in Ireland, and the sprawling Nazca lines in Peru are far more than collections of rocks or mysterious drawings. They are integral, active components of a mythic geography designed to harness celestial power, mark sacred time, and serve as portals or eternal resting places for the community's most important members. These constructions represent humanity's supreme effort to impose cosmic order onto the earthly plane, to bend the very bones of the land into a mirror reflecting the patterns of the heavens. The field of archaeoastronomy reveals the staggering precision involved. The passage tomb at Newgrange is engineered so that for a few precious minutes around the winter solstice, a narrow beam of sunlight travels down a long tunnel to illuminate the inner chamber, a symbolic rebirth of the sun deep within the womb of the earth. The Nazca geoglyphs, those vast figures of spiders, hummingbirds, and monkeys etched into the desert plateau, align with solstice sunrises and point toward sources of precious water, making them a giant, ritual map of survival. This convergence of myth, nascent science, and ritual created a powerful mediating space. Here, human communities could actively engage with the cycles that governed their lives, the movements of the sun, moon, and stars. By building these alignments, they transformed anonymous countryside into an encoded, sacred text, a scripture written in earth and stone that was readable only to the initiated. The landscape was no longer just inhabited, it was awakened to a higher purpose. It became a permanent interface between the human realm and the cosmic order, a place where time itself could be seen, measured, and perhaps influenced. When you visit such a site today, that feeling of profound intentionality is often palpable. You are not simply in a built environment, you are standing within a thought, a colossal idea made solid. This human drive to shape the land for cosmic purposes, however, finds a wilder, more organic and dangerous expression in another kind of mythic terrain. The stones of a sacred circle speak of alignment with the heavens, but the stones of a dragon's lair whisper of a deeper, more dangerous pact with the earth itself. Venture into the fire-lit cavern of a creature from Germanic or Chinese lore, and you step into a landscape of concentrated paradox. This is not merely a monster's den, but a place of immense, cursed wealth and guarded knowledge, often buried at the heart of a forbidden mountain or beneath the dark waters of a lonely tarn. The dragon, that near-universal mythic being, is intrinsically tied to a specific and volatile terrain. Its home is defensive, isolated, and often geothermally active, with the creature's fiery breath mirroring the volcanic vents or methane seepages our ancestors witnessed with awe. The Lair represents the ultimate challenge and the ultimate prize, a landscape that fuses immense value with existential peril into a single, terrifying location. In epic tales from Beowulf to the Volsunga saga, the hero's journey to such a place is never just about slaying a beast, it is a ritual of cleansing. The dragon is portrayed as a parasitic, chaotic force that hoards wealth, blights the land, and usurps the rightful sovereignty of a king or community. By confronting it in its deepest stronghold, the hero restores balance, liberating the treasure and healing the kingdom. The landscape itself becomes an extension of the monster. Descriptions often blur the line between flesh and earth, with scales like polished stones, a tail that could be a winding cavern ridge, and breath that hangs over its territory like a poisonous mist. This fusion makes the quest a direct confrontation with a wild, untamed, and possessive aspect of nature itself. We can still feel the mythic DNA of this narrative pulsing in our modern stories. What is the quest to drill in a perilous deep-sea trench, or to mine a resource-rich asteroid, if not a version of the Dragon's Lair saga? We still speak of untapped resources guarded by extreme environments, and send our technological heroes into those depths seeking a hoard that promises power, with the ever-present risk of awakening a catastrophic backlash. The story warns that great wealth taken from the heart of the wild comes with a profound cost and a duty to use it wisely. From these caverns of guarded treasure, we find that some landscapes offer a different kind of wealth altogether, not in gold but in restoration. A dragon's hoard is power locked away, but the water bubbling from a hidden spring offers a different kind of wealth entirely, one that flows freely to those who find it. Step into a sun-dappled grove where the air is cool, and the only sound is the soft, constant murmur of water breaking through stone. This is the Numinous spring, a place instantly sanctified by its life-giving and mysterious properties. From the Castalian spring at Delphi, where priestesses drank to induce prophetic visions, to the steaming, mineral-rich waters of Bath in England, these hydrotherapeutic landscapes were believed to be direct conduits to the otherworld. The spring was more than a water source, it was a point where the veil between worlds grew thin, its waters charged with the essence of the earth itself. Such sites were almost universally dedicated to deities of healing and wellness. The Greeks honored Hygeia, the goddess of health, at these springs, while at Bath, the Celts and later Romans venerated Sulis Minerva, a fusion of a local water goddess and the Roman goddess of wisdom and craft. The grove of ancient trees that typically surrounded the spring was not mere scenery. It formed a natural temple, a living architecture of roots and branches that framed the sacred space, its deep tranquility creating a profound sense of separation from the noise and toil of the everyday world. This combination of vital water and protective wood made the healing grove a complete sanctuary for body and spirit. Myths are filled with heroes who are strengthened, cleansed, or even reborn in such waters. The archaeological record confirms this deep, enduring reverence. At the Roman baths in Bath, thousands of lead tablets called depictions have been recovered from the sacred spring. These were personal messages inscribed and cast into the waters, pleas to the goddess Sulis for justice or healing, tangible proof of individual hopes entrusted to that numinous place. These sites democratized access to the divine. Unlike a temple that might require priestly intercession, the spring offered a direct, tangible, and experiential benefit. You could feel the water, drink it, bathe in it, and witness its effects. This made them powerful community hubs, drawing people from great distances not just for cure, but for connection, creating networks of pilgrimage centered on shared hope and restoration. So what drives our continued, powerful attraction to natural springs and secluded forest retreats, even in our age of advanced medicine? It is more than nostalgia. It is a deep-seated recognition of a landscape that offers something modern life often lacks, a holistic restoration that engages all the senses. It is the ancient understanding that some places are inherently restorative, that the earth itself holds a quiet, potent pharmacy for the spirit. These tranquil groves, however, are not the only landscapes that speak of the past. They are gentle entries into a much vaster and more imposing record, one written not in water, but in enduring stone and collective memory. That healing spring flows from a hill, and some hills themselves are the source of a different kind of power. Scattered across the English countryside are smooth, grass-covered domes that seem as natural as the landscape itself. These are the long barrows and round barrows, ancient burial mounds that have softened with millennia of rain and root. To the modern eye, they are picturesque features, but to the people who built them, they were something far more profound. These were not simply tombs, they were dwelling places. By interring their community's most important members within these prominent, often laboriously constructed hills, cultures from Neolithic Europe to the Kofun period of Japan literally wove their ancestors into the very fabric of the land. The deceased did not depart for a distant underworld, they remained present, their spirit now residing within that mound, a permanent and watchful part of the topography. This practice transformed the ancestral mound into a cornerstone of the mythic landscape. It created a permanent, visible tether between the living, the dead, and the territory they all shared. The mound was a portal, a place where the veil was thin. Offerings of food, drink, or precious objects left at its base were not acts of mere remembrance, but active communication, a way to sustain and honor those who were believed to still influence the community's fortune, fertility, and protection. This belief granted these hills immense social and political power, a ruling lineage that could point to a grand, imposing tumulus and say, "Our founding ancestor rests there," gained a powerful source of legitimacy. Their right to the land was not just won by force, but inherited from the spirits within the soil itself. The landscape thus became a dense, living archive of memory and identity. Every significant hillock might have a name, a story, a spirit attached to it. The countryside was no longer anonymous. It was a familial and social map, every feature a chapter in an ongoing story of who the people were and where they came from. This deep connection reshapes how we see these ancient sites. The great keyhole-shaped coffin of Japan, some surrounded by moats, were not hidden graves but spectacular, enduring monuments meant to be seen and acknowledged by all, declaring a dynasty's eternal presence in the realm. In this light, our own modern traditions carry a faint echo of this ancient logic. Why do we feel compelled to visit the graves of loved ones or journey to historical monuments and battlefields? It is more than tourism or duty. On some level, we are still seeking that tangible connection, that specific location where we can feel the presence of the past, where memory feels anchored to the earth. We are still trying to map our own story onto the land, to find our place in a continuity that stretches back through time. This profound need to root identity in geography did not stop at the burial mound. It expanded to encompass entire regions, weaving people, myth, and terrain into a single, inseparable tapestry. A burial mound anchors a family line, but an entire continent can be mapped by the footsteps of its creators. Among the most profound expressions of the mythic landscape is the Aboriginal concept of the dreaming, a foundational reality where every physical feature was sung into existence. During the Dreamtime, ancestral beings traversed the land, and in their epic journeys of creation, conflict, and transformation, they left an indelible record. Where a giant kangaroo leaped, a mountain range rose. Where a creator serpent plunged into the earth, a waterhole formed. This is not mythology placed upon a passive terrain. The landscape itself is the living scripture, every ridge and river bend a sentence in an epic story of law, identity, and origin. These narratives form intricate songlines which are far more than tales. They are precise navigational charts, legal systems, and spiritual guides, encoding directions across vast distances through melody and verse. To know the song is to know the path, the resources, and the proper way to care for every part of the country. It creates a seamless fusion of ecology, spirituality, and social order, where the land and its people are in constant, sacred dialogue. This ethno-geographic impulse to weave identity directly into the terrain is a human universal, though few systems were as comprehensive as the songlines. In the ancient Greek world, the landscape was similarly storied, with each city-state and region defined by its own foundational myths that answered urgent, practical questions. Why does Thebes stand where it does? Because its founder, Cadmus, was guided there by an oracle and fought a dragon to secure the site. Why does Athens bear that name? Because the goddess Athena won a divine contest by gifting its people the olive tree. These were not casual fables but essential title deeds, written in narrative rather than parchment. They provided divine or heroic precedent for territorial claims, justified settlement patterns, and explained local customs and rituals. A particular spring was sacred because a nymph was transformed there. A strange rock formation marked the spot where a hero fell. This process transformed what might seem like arbitrary geography into a deeply meaningful, storied homeland. It strengthened cultural cohesion by giving every citizen a shared, heroic backstory, rooted in the very soil they walked upon. The land became a teacher, its features constant reminders of ancestral values, triumphs, and warnings. This deep need to inscribe story onto place forges a powerful sense of belonging. It answers the fundamental human questions: why is this land ours, and what happened here to make it sacred? The myth map provides the answers, turning space into place and wilderness into home. Even in our globalized modern world, we continue this ancient practice, often without realizing it. We create our own, smaller-scale songlines through local history and folklore. The naming of a neighborhood after a long-gone farm or a notable resident, the stories we tell about the old oak tree in the park, or the urban legends attached to a particular bend in the road, these are all acts of mythic mapping. They layer meaning onto our everyday environments, transforming anonymous streets into a landscape of personal and communal memory. They answer, on a local level, the same old questions: what makes this place ours and what stories does it hold? These identity-forging landscapes often crystallize around a single, breathtaking natural wonder, a feature so imposing it demands a story all its own. The land itself could become a monument of such impossible geometry that only a divine hand seemed responsible. Along the coast of Northern Ireland, the giant's Causeway stretches into the sea, a pavement of nearly 40,000 interlocking basalt columns, most of them perfect hexagons. To the modern geologist, this is the result of cooling lava, but to the human imagination faced with such staggering symmetry, a different story emerged. This was the work of the giant Finn McCool, who built it as a road to stride across the sea and confront his Scottish rival. This pattern is a universal human response. Confronted with a landscape feature so immense, so beautiful, or so bizarre that it defies everyday explanation, our ancestors did not see random geology. They saw a signature. They crafted etiological myths, stories of origin that explained the inexplicable through the actions of gods, heroes, or primordial beings. The vast scar of the Grand Canyon might be the drag mark of a god's spear thrown in anger. Australia's monolithic Uluru is not just a rock, but, in the stories of the Anangu people, evidence of a great ancestral battle from the Dreamtime. A waterfall of thunderous power was the tears of a spirit, and a meteor crater was the footprint of a celestial visitor. These narratives served a profound and practical cognitive function. They domesticated the awe-inspiring, a feature that could evoke terror or sublime wonder, was transformed into a chapter in a familiar, human-scale story. By giving it a reason, a creator, and a place within their mythic history, people made the overwhelming knowable. It was no longer a chaotic, meaningless force of nature, but a deliberate artifact, a monument with a biography. This process of myth-making did more than just explain, it consecrated. By linking a natural wonder to the divine or the heroic, cultures elevated these sites to sacred status. They became places where the extraordinary had visibly broken into the ordinary world, locations forever marked by that encounter. This ensured their preservation and reverence. People would not casually quarry the stones of a giant's causeway or deface the mountain where a god had rested, for that was not merely rock, it was a relic. The story acted as the first conservation law, protecting the site by embedding it in cultural memory and identity. So this invites a quiet, personal reflection. When you stand before a natural wonder today, armed with the scientific narrative of plate tectonics and erosion, does that knowledge satisfy the same deep part of you that a mythic explanation once would have? Does understanding the mechanics of a rainbow fully replace the feeling that it might be a bridge for spirits? There is a longing there, a hint that we still perceive these places as more than the sum of their physical processes. We sense they are speaking, even if we have partly forgotten the old language, and some of these wonders were not seen as silent artifacts, but as living voices. The land did not just hold stories, it could also speak them directly. At the sacred site of Delphi in ancient Greece, a priestess known as the Pythia would descend into a chamber, seat herself upon a tripod over a fissure in the rock, and breathe in vapors said to rise from the earth. In this altered state, she would deliver the riddling prophecies of the god Apollo. This was not considered the ravings of an individual, but the voice of the landscape itself, a direct transmission channel where geology became divine speech. Delphi exemplifies the foundational concept of the divinatory landscape, a place where the boundary between worlds grew so thin that communication flowed through the very air, water, and stone. An oracle was never just a person, it was always a location, a specific point on the Earth's surface believed to be a puncture in reality. At Dodona in northwestern Greece, priests interpreted the rustling of leaves in a sacred oak grove and the clanging of bronze vessels stirred by the wind as the words of Zeus. In places like the silent, dark Lake Avernus in Italy, its still surface was gazed into as a mirror to the underworld, a portal for seeking messages from the departed. The geography was the essential medium. Natural phenomena, the hiss of a steam vent, the pattern of birds in flight over a particular cliff, the way oil swirled on water in a sacred spring, were not random events. They were a code to be deciphered, a language in which the divine will was written across the living world. This belief created a sacred economics of travel, a pilgrimage industry that drew kings and commoners from across the Mediterranean. They undertook arduous journeys bearing lavish gifts, all for the chance to pose a question at one of these potent sites. The underlying assumption was profound. The Earth itself was a responsive, participatory partner in human destiny. It was a geologically conscious universe where cracks in the rock were not flaws but mouths. This practice reveals a deep cultural comfort with ambiguity. The prophecies were famously cryptic, open to multiple interpretations. The landscape provided the raw signal, but the human mind had to complete the circuit, wrestling with the meaning. This leads to a compelling modern question. In our data-saturated age, where we demand clear metrics and predictive algorithms, where do we go to seek truly ambiguous, fateful guidance? What landscapes, physical or digital, do we now invest with a kind of oracular power? Perhaps we see it in the quiet consultation of an ancient text opened at random, in the labyrinthine paths of a botanical garden where we hope for a moment of clarity, or even in the vast, echoing forums of the internet where we seek signs from the collective unconscious. The journey for an answer often required navigating a terrain designed to confound and transform. The oracle's winding path was not the only one designed to turn the traveler around. Etched into the stone floors of ancient cathedrals or traced on the ground with stones and turf, the classical labyrinth offered a different kind of journey. Its single, winding but unbranching path, leading inexorably to a center and back out again, was not a puzzle. It was a prescribed pilgrimage in miniature, a ritual landscape you could walk with your own 2 feet. From the famous design at Chartres Cathedral to the ancient stone labyrinths of Scandinavia, this universal pattern served as a powerful tool for meditation, initiation, and symbolic rebirth. To walk it was to enact a myth. The most enduring story is, of course, the legend of Theseus and the Minotaur, where the hero navigates the Cretan labyrinth to confront the beast at its heart and find his way out again with Ariadne's thread. But this narrative was itself a map for a deeper, internal process. The center could represent the underworld, the hidden self, or a sacred, untamed power like the bull. The winding path inward mirrored a descent into the unconscious, a confrontation with one's own inner shadows or fears, and the subsequent return symbolized reintegration into the world, transformed. This ritual walking or dancing of the labyrinth was a way to physically internalize a cosmic truth that the path to any meaningful center, whether of knowledge, power, or peace, is rarely straight. It requires commitment, a willingness to turn back on yourself, and trust in the larger design, even when the destination seems momentarily farther away. This concept of the labyrinth extended far beyond man-made designs. Natural features were seen through this same symbolic lens. Vast, echoing cave systems were understood as the Earth's own labyrinth, their dark, branching passages leading to hidden chambers of mystery or danger. A dense, tangled forest where one could easily lose all sense of direction became a mythic maze, a place of disorientation that could, paradoxically, lead to profound revelation if one persevered. Even the layout of certain ancient cities, with their winding, narrow streets seemingly designed to confuse outsiders, took on this quality, creating a lived environment that taught its inhabitants to navigate complexity. The labyrinthine landscape, in all its forms, taught a lesson that feels deeply relevant today. It presented a model for navigating life's inevitable complexities, not by seeking a simplistic, straight-line solution, but by embracing the necessary turns and trusting the process. Can you see this ancient archetype alive in our modern stories and practices? The monomyth of the hero's journey, with its stages of departure, initiation, and return, follows that same winding path into the unknown and back. Therapeutic practices that use guided visualization often lead an individual on an imagined journey through a forest, down a path, or into a cave, mirroring the labyrinth structure to facilitate inner exploration and healing. The archetype endures because it maps a fundamental human experience. That transformation requires a journey through confusion to find clarity. Emerging from that symbolic center, having walked the winding path, we arrive at the most intimate and immediate mythic landscape of all. It is the one we carry with us every moment, the human body itself. The labyrinth's path leads inward to a landscape more intimate than any temple or mountain range. It is the map you carry within yourself, the human body. Ancient Hindu sages and Greek philosophers alike proposed a stunning idea that the entire cosmos is mirrored in miniature within each person. Your bones were the mountains, your blood the rivers, your breath the wind, and your mind the celestial realm. You were, in essence, a walking, breathing mythic landscape. This was the doctrine of the microcosm and the macrocosm, a belief that the grand external stories of gods and monsters had their precise parallels inside your own skin. The epic struggle between order and chaos was not just a tale of creation, but the daily physiological balance of health and illness. The hero's perilous journey to the underworld became a metaphor for exploring the shadowy depths of your own subconscious. The sacred mountain you might pilgrimage toward was, in this tradition, your own spine or the summit of your own head. This was not a vague, poetic comparison, but a detailed, practical map for spiritual advancement. In the yogic traditions of India, practitioners sought to awaken the Kundalini energy, imagined as a serpent coiled at the base of the spine, and guide it upward through a series of internal energy centers or chakras, each associated with specific qualities and elements. This was a literal ascent of the inner mountain, aligning the individual's microcosm with the divine macrocosm. Similarly, Western alchemists used the language of internal landscapes, speaking of purifying base materials within the self to achieve a golden state of enlightenment. This internalization was profoundly democratic. It suggested that you did not need vast wealth to fund a pilgrimage to a distant shrine. The most sacred journey was the one you took sitting still, turning your awareness inward to navigate the rivers of thought and climb the peaks of concentration. The ultimate oracle was your own disciplined consciousness. So when we use modern phrases like inner space, exploring our mindscape, or navigating emotional terrain, are we not speaking this ancient language? We continue to project landscape metaphors onto the invisible realms of thought and feeling because that map is written deep in our collective psyche. It allows us to chart the uncharted within. Having so thoroughly mapped the interior self, the human imagination then set these mythic templates adrift, letting them travel on the currents of trade, conquest, and story. That inner map was not meant to stay within one mind. It was a story waiting to be told, and stories have always been the most persistent travelers of all. Take the tale of a world drowned beneath a furious, cleansing flood. This narrative appears not in one culture, but in hundreds, from the frozen north to the dense rainforest. Its most ancient written version comes from Mesopotamia, etched into the clay tablets of the Epic of Gilgamesh, where the hero Utnapishtim builds a great boat to survive the god's decision to wipe humanity from the earth. This core idea of a divine reset enacted through water proved astonishingly portable. Centuries later, a strikingly similar story was woven into the Hebrew Bible, with Noah, his ark, and a covenant symbolized by a rainbow. Across the Mediterranean, the Greeks told of Deucalion and Pyrrha, who survived a great deluge sent by Zeus and repopulated the earth by casting stones behind them, which sprang up as new people. Far across the Atlantic, the Maya, in their Popol Vuh, described a world destroyed by a great flood sent by the heart of sky, leaving only a few survivors to begin again. This is not a case of coincidence, but of transmission and adaptation. The flood myth, in its essence, is a powerful tool for explaining geological evidence of ancient sea level changes or catastrophic local floods, and for exploring themes of divine justice, purification, and rebirth. As it traveled along bustling trade routes with conquering armies or on the lips of wandering storytellers, it was not copied verbatim, it was rerouted. In Mesopotamia, the floodplain of the Tigris and Euphrates provided the landscape. For the island-dwelling Greeks, the flood came from the sea and sky. For the inland Maya, the deluge was part of a cycle of cosmic creation and destruction. The mythic landscape of a global cataclysm was adapted to local terrain and local gods, answering each culture's unique theological and environmental questions. This process is known as syncretism, the blending and merging of beliefs from different traditions. It reveals the ancient world as a web of surprising connections. When the Greeks conceptualized their underworld, Hades, they were not working in a vacuum. Through contact with Egypt and the Near East, elements like the judging of souls and the symbolic ferryman across a river of the dead filtered into their own rich mythology, creating a more complex chthonic landscape. Similarly, as Buddhism spread from India across Asia, its descriptions of mythical mountains like Mount Meru did not erase local beliefs. Instead, they often merged with pre-existing mountain cults in Tibet, China, and Japan. The new Buddhist cosmology provided a grand framework, while the local spirit of the mountain remained, now seen as a protector or manifestation of the Buddha's teachings. This demonstrates the dual nature of these foundational concepts. They were compelling and resonant enough to be desired, adopted by cultures far from their point of origin. Yet they were also beautifully malleable, flexible enough to be grafted onto a new cultural tree and bear fruit in a different color and flavor. Studying this cross-cultural transmission does more than trace historical influence. It reveals a shared human toolkit for confronting the universal mysteries of life, death, and the power of nature. We did not create our mythic maps in isolated rooms, but in a great, ancient conversation that flowed across continents. And that conversation often grew most intense, most creative, and most fraught in the spaces where worlds collided, on the unstable ground of the colonial frontier. The great conversation of mythic maps found its most volatile and creative expression where the known world ended. For an ancient Greek sailor, the journey west would eventually bring you to the Pillars of Hercules, the towering cliffs that frame the Strait of Gibraltar. To pass beyond them was to leave the familiar embrace of the Mediterranean, the Mare Nostrum, and enter the vast, terrifying expanse of the outer ocean, a realm of perpetual darkness and unimaginable strangeness. This was not merely a geographical boundary, it was the ultimate psychological frontier, a place where the solid ground of shared reality dissolved into the pure speculation of myth. Here, the map itself would often give way to artistic warning, with the blank spaces filled not with coastlines, but with the chilling phrase "Hic sunt dracones, here be dragons." This was not literal cartography, but a confession of ignorance and fear, a symbolic landscape projected onto the void. The Roman naturalist Pliny the Elder compiled travelers' tales of the distant edges, populating these margins with races of beings like the Cynosphali, men with the heads of dogs, or the Blemii, whose faces were said to be embedded in their chests. Centuries later, medieval maps would place the legendary Christian kingdom of Prester John in these same ambiguous territories, a land of impossible piety and immense wealth. These fantastical insertions served a crucial dual purpose. On one hand, they acted as cautionary barriers, reinforcing the danger and otherness of the world beyond the cultural pale, justifying a stance of isolation or defensive fear. Yet simultaneously, they were irresistible lures. The promise of encountering dog-headed men or finding a lost kingdom of saints created a powerful engine for exploration and, inevitably, for conquest. The frontier was a landscape of profound paradox, a space that both repelled and attracted, that defined us by vividly imagining them. The very act of drawing these monsters or writing these names onto the parchment was a primal attempt at control. It was a way to domesticate the terrifying unknown by giving it a form, however bizarre, and bringing it within the boundaries of the imaginable. To name a thing was to begin the process of knowing it, of claiming it. This mythic mapping of the edge directly fueled the age of discovery. When Columbus set sail, he carried with him not only nautical charts but a mind saturated with these medieval imaginings, fully expecting to find the edges of the earthly paradise or the lands described by Marco Polo. The frontier landscape he sought was a story first, a geography second. We like to think we have erased these blank spaces from our maps, that satellite imagery and sonar have banished the monsters to the realm of fiction. But have we? Our modern edges of the map are simply more abstract, yet they pulse with the same ancient energy. The crushing, lightless void of the deep ocean trench is our ocean of darkness, a place where we still project creatures of nightmare and wonder, from giant squids to bioluminescent phantoms. The vast, silent expanse of interstellar space is our ultimate frontier, onto which we project hopes of alien civilizations or fears of cosmic isolation. Even the intricate frontier of artificial intelligence represents a new kind of unmapped territory, giving rise to stories of digital consciousness and silicon-based life. We are still drawing our monsters and our kingdoms of Prestigion on these new charts. The psychological function remains unchanged. These projected landscapes still serve as pressure valves for our collective anxieties about the future and our hopes for transcendent discovery. They justify immense investment in exploration, from space agencies to particle colliders, and they continue to shape the narratives we tell ourselves about progress, risk, and what it means to be human at the very edge of understanding. The ancient sailor's terror and wonder as he gazed past the Pillars of Hercules now lives in the astronaut looking back at the fragile blue marble of Earth, or the scientist peering into the quantum foam. We are still that sailor standing at the brink, using the only tools we have ever had to make sense of the abyss, the tools of story and myth. Those ancient sailors charting the edge of the world were mapping a psychology we all share, a psychology that has never truly left us. You can hear its echoes not in a sacred text, but in the opening pages of a modern fantasy novel or the first moments of an epic film. J.R.R. Tolkien did not merely invent Middle-earth, he meticulously reassembled it. His misty mountains are the perilous abode of ancient powers and hidden kingdoms, straight from the archetype of the sacred and treacherous peak. The sinister, watchful trees of the old forest are the enchanted woodland where familiar rules dissolve. The deep, echoing mines of Moria are the classic labyrinthine underworld, a place of lost glory, profound danger, and confronting a monstrous shadow. Tolkien was a scholar of myths, and his genius lay in synthesizing these northern European landscape templates into a new, coherent world that felt instantly resonant and strangely familiar to millions. He proved these ancient forms still possess an undeniable power to structure epic narratives and captivate the human imagination on a global scale. Why does this happen? The psychologist Carl Jung offered a compelling lens. He proposed that these recurring landscapes, the mountain, the forest, the cave, the river, are not just cultural artifacts, but archetypes of the collective unconscious. They are innate, universal psychic structures, deep patterns in the mind that shape how we dream, imagine, and tell stories across all cultures and eras. When we encounter the dark forest in a tale, we do not need it explained. We intuitively understand it as a place of trial, of losing one's way, of facing the unknown parts of the self. The mountain we must climb represents a monumental challenge and the quest for a higher perspective. These forms provide a pre-built symbolic vocabulary, a shared language of the psyche. Today, this language has largely migrated from the realm of state religion to the playgrounds of modern culture. We explore these mythic landscapes not in rituals to appease a god, but in the safe, narrative parameters of a fantasy novel, a cinematic saga, or an open-world video game. In a game, you physically navigate a digital sacred mountain or a haunted forest, confronting symbolic challenges that mirror inner struggles. The hero's journey from a humble village, through a treacherous landscape, to a final confrontation and return, is the labyrinthine path made interactive. Even in the language of modern psychotherapy, we speak of navigating your inner landscape, doing shadow work, or climbing the mountain of recovery. These are not just metaphors, they are active uses of that ancient internal map. The underworld becomes the subconscious, the river of fate becomes the flow of life's events, and the guiding star becomes a personal goal or ideal. This enduring relevance tells us something profound. These hidden mythic landscapes are far more than historical curiosities or charming folklore. They appear to be fundamental components of human cognition and creativity. They are the deep grammar of story, the innate settings in which our minds naturally frame the drama of growth, conflict, and discovery. They help us process complex realities, like facing a great challenge or navigating a period of confusion, by giving them a tangible, spatial form we can explore in narrative. So it is worth asking yourself a reflective question as our journey draws near its end. What mythic landscape from a recent book, film, or game resonated with you most deeply? Was it the isolating expanse of a desert planet, the claustrophobic corridors of a derelict starship, or the serene, impossible geometry of a floating city? Your strong pull toward that specific setting is likely not an accident. It may be that particular archetypal landscape speaking directly to a chapter in your own life's journey, offering a symbolic space to explore a challenge, a fear, or a hope within the safety of a story. Having traced these forms from their ancient origins to their vibrant modern life, we can now step back and see the magnificent tapestry they have woven across the whole of human experience. From the world-spanning branches of Yggdrasil to the intimate microcosm of the human body, we have traversed the hidden mythic landscapes that served as the ancient world's most profound software for interpreting reality. These were not mere fantasies, but active, living frameworks that provided meaning, morality, and a profound sense of place in a vast and often incomprehensible universe. They were the original operating system of the human mind, the code through which our ancestors navigated everything from the changing seasons to the final, quiet mystery of what comes next. These maps shaped laws, inspired breathtaking art, guided the footsteps of explorers into the unknown, and offered essential solace in the face of life's greatest hardships. They turned random geography into sacred narrative, transforming a simple mountain into a divine throne and a winding river into the very flow of fate itself. While our scientific explanations for natural phenomena have radically changed, the deep psychological patterns these landscapes represent have not faded. The quest, the search for a sacred center, the crossing of a dangerous threshold, the confrontation with the abyss, these are not relics. They remain powerfully alive in the stories we tell, the games we play, and the dreams that visit us in the deepest hours of the night. Our modern myths, whether set in a galaxy far, far away or within the circuits of a digital world, are still built upon this ancient bedrock. The writer J.G. Ballard once noted, "We live in a world ruled by fictions of every kind, and perhaps the oldest and most enduring fictions are those we first painted onto the land itself, seeing faces in the cliffs and hearing voices in the wind." So I encourage you to take this lens and look at your own local landscape with new eyes. That hill on the horizon, that old, twisted tree in the park, that creek that cuts through the neighborhood, what hidden stories might its features once have held for the people who lived there long ago? Which of these mythic landscapes we explored resonates most deeply with you? Is it the solitude of the sacred mountain, the mystery of the labyrinth, or the quiet sanctuary of the healing spring? Share your thoughts in the comments below. I would truly love to hear which part of this ancient map speaks to you. If this journey through the imagination of our ancestors has intrigued you, consider subscribing for more deep dives into the hidden patterns and mysteries that shape our world. Thank you for exploring these hidden maps with me.